All right. So first off, yeah, sorry about yesterday's show. The music was left a little bit loud. Um, Hopefully today we'll see the correction in that. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to do it. Obviously, it wasn't intended. Just kind of the realities of a very tight production schedule right now. Trying to get things ready for the big move, and I'm still trying to adjust this mic, which is kind of difficult because I'm now working in an environment completely devoid of furnishings. So there's a lot more background noise that can come through and bounce around in here. But here we go. Ship updates. So, realistically, over the next little while, the ship updates thing is going to get a little dry. I mean, we know that, right? You can look at the production schedule and you can see what's coming up. And yeah, there are a few interesting ships, but they're none of the real big prizes yet. We finally know what's up with the Idris. I mean, we have acknowledgement on that indeed it is going to wait until post Squadron 42 release and probably receive a few tweaks beyond the Squadron 42 version that you're going to be inhabiting in the game. And, there are things like the Defender coming up, but the Defender, I think most people would look at that and say, okay, great, the Defender, but Merchantman, my dude, the Merchant. And I totally get it. But I think that CIG kind of tested the waters when they were talking about the Vulture. They kind of said, hey, salvage is going to be coming up. And I think that, when they're going as far as to mention salvage and they're mentioning the Vulture, that I think that seems like possibly a more concrete date, that it may hit Q2 2019, which of course I am very excited for, as are, I'm sure, a number of Reclaimer owners who are looking at their ship and going, yeah, this is awesome, but can I use it? And so I can kind of see CIG, I can kind of see why they want to push the Vulture up to the front of the line. Because, salvage is going to be this whole brand new profession, this whole brand new game system, There are going to be iterations on things that we already have, iterations on mining. There are going to be evolutions in the mission system and the beacon system. But, this is going to be one of the first new big systems that we're going to get. This is going to be the next big profession in the game, salvage. And I think that they want to have a lot of accessibility to this new thing. I think, one of the things that's probably driving certain choices that CIG makes is how accessible is this to how many members of the community, and satisfying a lot of those wants will help kind of back some of the pressure off and kind of ease the impatience and ease the anticipation. I think I don't think that that's the single determining factor in their choices, but I think that it's definitely something that they recognize has a seat at that table, so to speak. So, what do I think about it? I think that they've probably already done it. They've probably already started. Who knows? Maybe they're confident enough in their entire library of Drake assets, which has to be very extensive at this point, that they feel that they can get most of the ship together in a fairly short amount of time and get it working. All they need is those mechanics, and the fact that they're implying that they're making the ship to go along with the mechanics means that they are, on some level, dealing with those mechanics, building out those mechanics, even though the roadmap doesn't really seem to show any progress. I think that they probably have a fair idea, and they're going to base it somewhat on mining and kind of build out from there. Do I think that it's a good idea? Well, I'm always going to be biased, towards Drake ships. But I think that CIG did a really smart thing. CIG did a really brilliant thing when they included profession ships in the game. With so many MMOs out there, and it's a broad genre, but with so many MMOs out there, one of the paths to progression that is so often ignored, and it's the field that's just left fallow time and time again, is the idea of profession progression. The idea of, what if you were the village armorer and you were supplying armor to the armies, or weapons, swords, shields, guns, lasers, missiles, and that was your path forward in the world, from a role play perspective, or just from just a general RPG perspective. It's such a rich area that I think has largely gone unrecognized in a lot of games. I mean, there's a part of me that wants to actually get into a Life is Feudal server where I can be the village armor or the sword maker or something like that. I just really don't have the time to pour into that game. I really don't. I wish I did, but I don't. And so I think that, yeah, I'm biased, but I think it's a good idea to kind of push up the Vulture. I mean, as long as it doesn't adversely affect any other ship. And I mean, when they were talking about, well, if we have one person who's free on the schedule, we can give them a little ship versus, we might need a team of people to take on a bigger ship. To me, that makes sense. So if they do it, that's something, that's kind of a bright star on the horizon. Now, a couple of months ago, I kind of dropped I don't think our corp is going to make it for 3-4. And then very shortly afterwards, we found out exactly that. And now we know the reason. Well, one of the reasons. I mean, if you've been around Loreville and you know what's going on with Loreville, clearly there's a lot that still needs to be fleshed out and fixed up. So Loreville is continuing to be a work in progress, but look what happened to Arcor. It looks pretty cool, right? I think it looks like a much more natural cityscape than the one that we were treated that little sneak peek of back in 2017. Now, of course, the 2017 version, which you're seeing up on the screen now, looks like a much more finished and polished version. You might think, oh my God, what are they doing? They're taking a step backwards with this. But I think that it doesn't take a lot of observation to see that there are, I chose this specific clip because you can see 1, 2, 3 buildings right up there just above the horizon, 2 of them dipping now in between or behind the struts, but that these are the same buildings repeated over and over and over again. And it is just, further elaboration of Area 18. It is still visually impressive, and it certainly got a lot of oohs and ahs from the crowd, but it was kind of the same geometry being repeated over and over again with the very tall buildings. And so I think that the new version that they're showing us, with a sunset in the distance and with all the windows lit up and with the textures applied, is going to be a far more impressive final product than the 2017 Citizen content. It just needs a little bit more to get there. Now, I want to come back to a point that I was making earlier in the video, where I talked about the next 6 months, because of course, the roadmap hasn't been expanded yet. We're kind of hoping for a more substantial expansion, and we are still hoping for that. And the next 6 months do look pretty dry. I mean, the Archimedes variants of the Reliant, all very cool ideas, but I mean, these are very small ships, generally, kind of low-hanging fruit. Does this mean it's going to continue to be that boring? I don't think so. CIG has made a point, specifically Disco Lando has made a point of hinting at the ships that you don't know about, right? And, hey, I've made some predictions, and quite a few have kind of come out right, or I've been fairly close, I would say. I'll be generous and say I've been fairly close with a lot of them. But, things like the Xenon's Somtakiai, that completely came out of left field. Could we see further expansions of the Xenon ships? I don't know. It's possible. I think that the ships that we're going to see, though, are probably going to be, somewhat dependent on what they need for Squadron 42. I don't think it takes a big leap of logic to say that obviously there is going to be a Xenon, kind of twist somewhere in Squadron 42, and that's why these ships are popping up. They hinted at a cargo ship for them as well, so it's possible that we might see that materialize. I think the first time they hinted on that would have been the end of 2014 when we got like a little snippet at the end of an RTV, or I think it was a chairman's letter that we got that showed us like a little brief interior screenshot of a ship, and it's a Xenon cargo ship. Are we ever going to see it materialize in the verse? And then it never really did. Possibly. There's some interesting ideas out there, and certainly out in the community, there's a lot of people who send me little links. It's like, hey, I designed this ship, what do you think of it? Here's my thread, and I designed this, what do you think of that? Or what if they did this kind of ship? There's a lot of good ideas out there, and I think there's still room to grow. There is a part of me that I always find fighting back against that, though, saying, come on, get the game done. But at the same time, I realize that the ships kind of exist on a different thread, and that there's always going to be this kind of perpetual populating the universe with many, many more ships. Though ultimately that could in itself be a problem, trying to balance these things against each other, if there even is a reasonable argument for balance, because the world itself is unbalanced. So how can you create an immersive video game with a realistic online world that somehow strives for a perfect balance, But anyways, I think that we're going to get surprised a few times over the next few months. I think we're going to see some things that we didn't expect to see. I think we're going to see some interesting things. I certainly hope so, because there's decent ships on tap for the next 6 months. But apart from the Hawk, nothing that really kind of gets me all that excited. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Anyways, that's the show for today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. See you tomorrow.